6 dark psychology tricks that always work. The silent game of influence. You think you're in control. You think your choices are your own. But before you even open your mouth, the room has already decided who you are. That's not persuasion. That's pre-suasion, the silent art of control. Every day, you are surrounded by invisible triggers, words, symbols, glances, tones. Tiny cues that decide how you think, what you desire, and who you obey. And the most dangerous part, you never even notice them. You walk into a room and feel smaller. You meet someone and, for some reason, you want to impress them. You scroll through social media and suddenly you need something you never cared about before. That's not coincidence. That's conditioning. A system designed to prime you, to make you act before you think. The manipulators of this world don't fight for control. They plant it, like a seed, inside your perception. Machiavelli understood it centuries ago. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, meaning they obey the image of power, not power itself. Cialdini exposed it in modern science. What you present first changes what comes after. Influence doesn't begin with words, it begins with context. And Robert Greene whispered the same truth through his 48 laws of power. Control the options. Get others to play with the cards you deal. Everything is the same game, just played in different centuries. The court of Florence, the corporate boardroom, the battlefield of relationships. In every arena, the powerful understand one thing. If you can control what people notice first, you don't need to control what they choose next. This is the foundation of dark psychology, the manipulation of attention, emotion, and perception before logic ever enters the room. And in this video, you'll learn 6 psychological tricks that always work. Techniques used by politicians, marketers, leaders, lovers, and liars alike. Each one powerful enough to bend decisions, change minds, and rewrite loyalty itself. But understand this, these are not toys. They're weapons. And weapons cut both ways. Because once you learn how the world manipulates you, you can never unsee it. Let's begin.
Trick 1. Priming obedience. The power before power. Power doesn't begin with what you say. It begins with what they feel before you speak. You walk into a room, and in the first 7 seconds, everyone's subconscious has already decided, are you to be feared, respected, ignored? That silent judgment becomes the frame that controls every word that follows. Machiavelli understood this centuries before psychology gave it a name. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. He meant that people respond not to your intentions, but to what you project, your appearance, your silence, your stillness, your composure. The mind seeks patterns, and when it finds them, it obeys them. That's priming, the invisible shaping of perception before logic ever enters the room. You've seen it before. The boss who enters a meeting without rushing, without talking. He doesn't compete for attention, he absorbs it. He stands, waits, observes. Everyone feels it, the quiet gravity. No shouting, no arrogance, just presence. Before he even speaks, he's already set the hierarchy. That's the first rule of persuasion. Control the emotional atmosphere before the argument begins. When you speak after commanding the environment, your words become law. When you speak after begging for attention, your words become noise. The same principle governs every arena, from politics to love to war. In relationships, it's the person who makes you feel chosen before asking for sacrifice. They build emotional debt before the request. You feel special, seen, validated. And when they finally ask for something, you call it love, not manipulation. But what really happened is priming. They created a frame where compliance feels natural. They wrote the emotional script before you realized you were part of the play. Cialdini called it persuasion, the art of influencing people's focus before delivering the message. Shift what they're paying attention to, and you shift their entire decision-making process. That's why salesmen make you imagine owning the product before naming the price. Why politicians make you feel threatened before presenting their policy. Why leaders let silence stretch so others lean in. It's not manipulation of words, it's manipulation of context. Machiavelli would call it the stage of appearances. He warned princes to manage perception relentlessly because humans are guided by symbols, not truth. That's why kings wear crowns, why CEOs have corner offices, why your boss has the biggest chair in the room. These are not accidents. They are psychological anchors of obedience. They remind the mind who owns the narrative. You do this too, without realizing, when you raise your voice slightly, when you maintain still eye contact, when you slow your breathing. You are priming. You are shaping the frame. The question is, are you doing it intentionally, or are you being primed by someone else? Because in every conversation, one frame dominates and one submits. The one who controls the tone controls the truth. Look closely at your life. The friend who always comforts you before convincing you to agree. The colleague who flatters you before delegating their workload. The influencer who tells you you deserve better before selling you the illusion of improvement. Each of them knows, consciously or not, how to prime your emotions before guiding your choices. That's how obedience is created, not through force, but through emotional sequence. Cialdini's research revealed that people who were asked, "Are you a helpful person?" were twice as likely to donate later. Why? Because they were primed to see themselves as helpful. Their identity was hijacked before the action took place. The same principle governs power. If you can define how someone sees themselves, you don't need to tell them what to do. They'll do it to remain consistent with that identity. Machiavelli said, "He who becomes master of a city accustomed to freedom and does not destroy it will be destroyed by it." In other words, destroy the old mindset before you install a new one. That's what persuasion does. It destroys resistance quietly through framing. So when you walk into any room, don't just think about what to say. Think about what others must feel before you speak. Do you want them relaxed? Nervous? Grateful? Because that emotional context will decide everything that follows. Words persuade the ear, but presence persuades the soul. Control the atmosphere. Command attention. Own the silence. Because before every battle of words, there is a war of perception. And the one who wins that war never needs to fight.
Trick 2. Emotional anchoring. The art of attaching feelings to ideas. You don't remember words. You remember how they made you feel. Logic fades. Emotion sticks. Every manipulator, every leader, every seducer knows this simple truth. To control emotion is to control reality. Cialdini called it association. Machiavelli called it spectacle. Robert Greene called it charm, the weapon of kings. Different names, same power. The art of attaching emotion to an idea until that idea becomes irresistible. Think about it. The world isn't moved by facts, it's moved by feeling. A leader doesn't convince you with evidence. He convinces you with fear, and then gives that fear a name. He paints himself as the cure to a sickness he helped create. Crisis, savior, loyalty. It's the oldest trick in the book. The politician doesn't need your reason. He needs your reaction. Once you feel, you follow. The same thing happens in relationships. First, they shower you with affection. They make you feel chosen, special, irreplaceable. Then comes the twist, the small withdrawal, the guilt. You start chasing the high they gave you at the beginning. It's not love, it's conditioning. You've been anchored. They've connected pleasure to their presence and pain to their absence. Now, every moment with them feels like a test you can't pass. And the harder you try to please them, the more power they gain. Affection, guilt, compliance, a perfect psychological loop. In the workplace, it's the same script, just written in suits and titles. A mediocre boss uses fear of loss to control. Loss of approval, loss of status, loss of security. And you obey not because they deserve respect, but because they've made your survival depend on their validation. They've anchored anxiety to your job and gratitude to their presence. It's psychological imprisonment disguised as professionalism. That's emotional anchoring. And it works because your brain cannot separate emotion from truth. Every great manipulator knows how to fuse these two, emotion and association. They don't sell the product, they sell the feeling it represents. Not the watch, but the power of being seen wearing it. Not the speech, but the pride of agreeing with it. Not the person, but the story attached to them. And once you've felt it, once your nervous system ties pleasure or pain to that thing, your logic becomes irrelevant. Cialdini's research proved this countless times. When people felt happy before an argument, they agreed faster. When they felt threatened, they clung to the familiar. The emotional environment dictated the outcome, not the words. Machiavelli warned leaders about this power centuries ago. He wrote, "Men are moved more by the things that seem than by those that are." Meaning, don't waste energy proving truth. Attach emotion to illusion, and people will defend it as if it were real. That's how religions form, how ideologies spread, how corporations build loyalty from nothing but branding and fear of exclusion. You are ruled by anchors you can't even see. Here's the part most people never understand. Emotional anchoring isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's unintentional, the echo of survival instincts from centuries ago. When your ancestors heard thunder, they felt fear. Now, when your boss raises his voice, your body reacts the same way. Adrenaline, compliance, silence. The manipulator simply knows how to use that wiring against you. So what can you do? You can learn to see the anchors before they tighten. When someone flatters you too quickly, ask, what are they preparing me to accept? When a leader stirs your fear, ask, what truth is this emotion hiding? When a brand promises confidence, ask, who profits from my insecurity? Because the moment you separate emotion from message, you break the spell. The truth is this. You live in a world built on emotional architecture. Every movie, every speech, every post, every touch, designed to link feeling with meaning. And whoever controls that link, controls you. So remember, words persuade the mind, but emotion persuades the soul. If you ever want to master influence, don't argue harder, anchor deeper. Because in the war for power, logic is a whisper, and emotion is the scream that everyone obeys. Trick 3. The illusion of choice. Freedom as the perfect trap. You think you're free. You think you choose. But freedom, as you know it, is a story, written by someone else. Every option you're given is a cage with prettier paint. Every yes or no, a map drawn by the same hand. That's the illusion of choice, the most elegant form of control ever invented. Cialdini called it Pre-Suasion, the art of shaping the question before the answer exists. If you can guide someone's mind before they decide, you don't need to force them. They'll walk right into your design, smiling. It's the yes-set technique. You ask a series of small, agreeable questions. Nice weather today, right? You like efficiency, don't you? Would you prefer to do it now or later? By the time the real request appears, their mind is already nodding. The decision feels voluntary, but it's not. It's programmed. Managers use it. Salespeople live by it. Politicians perfect it. They don't command, they guide. They make you believe the path you take is yours, when in reality, it's the only path they left open. Machiavelli warned about this centuries ago. He wrote, "Men desire freedom, but are easily led by those who offer it in illusion." He understood that power doesn't need chains, it needs choices. The illusion of liberty keeps men obedient far longer than fear ever could. Think about the flexible work schedule. You can work anywhere, but you must always be available. You can leave early, but you'll never stop checking your messages. You traded your hours for the illusion of freedom, and your leash became invisible. That's not flexibility. That's containment disguised as autonomy. It's the same in relationships. Toxic partners don't say, "You can't." They say, "You can if you want, but you know how I'll feel." That's the illusion of choice. You're free to stay, you're free to go, but every path leads back to guilt or punishment. So you choose what they wanted all along, willingly, gratefully. The trick works because your brain hates conflict. It would rather believe it chose freely than confront the discomfort of manipulation. The illusion of freedom soothes the ego, and as long as you feel in control, you never notice the invisible strings. You defend your captor because you think they gave you options. In politics, this trick becomes an art form. You're told you have two sides, two parties, two visions, two futures. But look closer. Both are funded by the same interests. Both feed on the same fear. Both sell you freedom while defining its limits. You get to choose your illusion, and they get to keep your obedience. The genius of this manipulation is that it hides inside your pride. It flatters you. It whispers, "You're the one deciding." And that whisper feels good. It feels empowering. But it's a lullaby, not a truth. The world is full of men who believe they are kings when they are merely choosing between thrones built for them by others. So how do you break free? You start by seeing the pattern. When someone gives you two options, ask, who benefits either way? When someone says, "Do you want to do it now or later?" ask yourself, "Do I want it at all?" Freedom doesn't mean choosing between traps. It means recognizing there's a trap in the first place. Because real freedom isn't given, it's taken back. It's awareness. It's the power to say, "No, I see what you're doing." The world doesn't force you into obedience. It persuades you into cooperation. It sells you the comfort of control, while quietly writing your script. And every time you feel proud of your choices, remember, they might just be the bars of a golden cage. Freedom is the sweetest illusion ever sold, and the most profitable. Trick 4. The scarcity frame. Controlling desire through deprivation. You don't crave abundance. You crave what you can't have. That's the paradox of human desire. The less something is available, the more you convince yourself you need it. Cialdini called it the scarcity principle, but Machiavelli understood it long before psychology gave it a name. Power doesn't just come from giving, it comes from withholding. Nothing manipulates the human mind like the threat of loss. Think about it. You don't chase what's common. You chase what's vanishing. The lover who pulls away. The job you almost lost. The approval that's just out of reach. That's not coincidence. That's design. When something or someone becomes scarce, your brain assigns it value. And once it has value, you'll fight, beg, even destroy yourself to keep it. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must appear distant but desirable. He should show himself rarely, and when he does, it must feel like a privilege. The people will wait. They will gossip. They will worship the shadow of his presence. Because mystery sustains awe. Scarcity breeds devotion. A ruler who is always seen loses his aura. A leader who is too available becomes common. And what is common cannot command reverence. In the workplace, the same law rules quietly. The boss who praises everyone loses authority. But the boss who withholds approval, who gives it rarely, surgically, creates hunger. You'll work twice as hard just to hear, "Well done." You'll crave that validation like water. You'll stay late, chase perfection, because the scarcity of praise has made it precious. That's not leadership. That's conditioning. In relationships, the same manipulation unfolds. When someone pulls away, when they stop texting, stop calling, stop caring, you feel panic. You start rewriting your worth. What did I do wrong? How do I get them back? That's the scarcity frame at work. Deprivation sharpens desire. Absence creates obsession. They're not giving you love anymore. They're selling it back to you at a higher price. And the cruel part is, you'll pay it. In attention, in submission, in self-respect. Scarcity doesn't just manipulate what you want. It rewires how you value. You mistake rarity for worth. You mistake silence for power. You mistake distance for superiority. It's why luxury brands destroy their own stock. It's why cult leaders limit access to themselves. It's why people chase those who ignore them. The scarcity frame doesn't need logic. It needs emotion. And emotion doesn't count supply and demand. It kneels before absence. The manipulators know this. They make themselves scarce on purpose. They disappear just long enough for your imagination to fill the silence with worship. They know that when something feels rare, you'll chase it blindly, even if it hurts you. Machiavelli would have smiled at this truth, because to rule hearts, you don't need abundance. You need selective starvation. In a world drowning in attention, the rarest thing is withdrawal. Everyone's showing. Everyone's shouting, everyone's available. But the one who withholds, who says less, appears less, reveals less, becomes a mystery in a world addicted to noise. And mystery is the most seductive form of power. So here's the dark truth. If you want control, don't flood people with your presence. Starve them of it. Make your time rare, your approval costly, your attention sacred. Because scarcity turns ordinary things into objects of worship. And in a world of abundance,
The one who withholds becomes God.
Trick 5. The mirror effect. Making others fall in love with themselves. You think they love you. They don't. They love what they see reflected in your eyes, in your words, in your energy. That's the mirror effect. A silent manipulation older than kingdoms. Cialdini calls it the principle of similarity, but Machiavelli knew it centuries ago. To seem virtuous is more useful than to be virtuous. Before you speak, before you act, before you even smile, the mind is ready to trust what it recognizes. Similarity breeds comfort. Mirror the tone, the posture, the emotion, and suddenly they feel understood. They feel seen. They feel safe. And in that safety, they surrender. In relationships, you laugh at the same jokes, echo the same frustrations, mirror the subtle dreams they whisper to themselves in the dark. They begin to think, this person understands me better than anyone else. And suddenly, you hold the leash. Not through fear, not through force, through reflection. In business, the mirror effect is everywhere. A salesperson repeats your phrases, mirrors your body language, nods at every fear you express. You leave the room thinking you've made a decision yourself. You feel empowered. You feel clever. But really, you've been guided step by step into their outcome. In politics, it's populism. A candidate parrots your values, your grievances, your dreams, and you follow blindly, not out of logic, but because you see yourself in them. Pre-Suasion teaches the same lesson. Before influence even begins, make the person feel understood. Before the ask, prime the mind. Before the manipulation, prime the heart. Mirror their fears, mirror their desires, mirror their pain, and they will follow into agreements, into loyalty, even into ruin. Machiavelli knew this well. To appear virtuous, to appear similar, to appear aligned, is often more potent than actual virtue, because people trust what confirms their own self-image. If they see themselves in you, they'll do anything you guide them toward. They'll fight for ideas they believe are theirs. They'll obey strategies they think they chose. You don't manipulate them directly. You manipulate their reflection. And in that reflection, you become untouchable. Think of it like water. You don't force a reflection. You shape it with stillness, with subtle cues. You don't push them. You mirror them, and they move themselves into your world. They don't just follow you. They fall in love with themselves, and in that love, you are the silent conductor of their obedience. The lesson is simple. Show them what they want to see. Echo their fears, their hopes, their ego, and the mind, deceived by its own reflection, will obey without realizing it. Because the mind trusts mirrors, and when you are the mirror, you are power. Trick 6. Controlled chaos, the manipulator's final weapon. When logic breaks, chaos speaks. When facts fail, distraction wins. And when the world becomes noise, the one who can hear through it becomes everything. Controlled chaos is not random. It is engineered. It's the art of turning attention into confusion, confusion into dependence, and dependence into obedience. Cialdini taught you that attention is the gateway to influence. What people notice first shapes what they decide later. Machiavelli taught you to use fear as a tool, not an accident. Robert Greene whispered the same truth in Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Never allow them to settle. Combine them, and you have a weapon that defeats reason without firing a shot. Think of a magician. The hand that flourishes is the hand that hides the trick. While you stare at the applause of one motion, the other hand rearranges your world. Controlled chaos is the same trick on a larger scale. You are distracted by the bright scandal on the left, while everything you care about is quietly shifted to the right. You follow the narrative, the outrage, the shock, and while you're busy reacting, decisions are made that serve someone else. Political fear, scandals, and smokescreens. Look at politics. A scandal breaks, loud, moral, urgent. For days the feeds erupt in flames, commentators scream, allies posture, enemies cower. Your attention is a bank rapidly withdrawn. And in the quiet shadow of that fury, bills pass, contracts are signed, land deals close, surveillance grows, budgets are altered. Not because you supported them, because your attention was sold, rented, and then bought by those who needed it most. This is not incompetence, this is strategy. Create the spectacle, capture attention, hide the work where people aren't looking. When citizens shout about moral outrage, you no longer notice the steady theft of agency. The abuser's cycle, chaos as control. In relationships, controlled chaos is the abuser's daily bread. Create conflict, intense, confusing, personal. Break down your sense of stability. Then, like clockwork, apologize with contrition so deep it feels sacred. Promise change, beg forgiveness, offer affection. For a moment, clarity returns, relief floods you, you lower your defenses. Then the cycle repeats, new chaos, new apology, deeper dependence. What looks like passion is often manipulation. What feels like drama is often the architecture of domination. You start to doubt your judgment. You start to believe you're the volatile one. That's the point. Confusion fractures your reality. Apology rebuilds it, only on their terms. Divide and rule, workplace edition. Workplaces are fertile ground for quiet chaos. The leader who keeps teams fragmented keeps loyalty diffuse. Rumors, mixed messages, shifting goals. These are not mistakes, they are levers. When people are confused, they cling to authority that looks decisive. A manager who never clarifies expectations but always steps in with an answer becomes indispensable. A divided team argues about petty things while systems change around them. Credit is moved, power concentrates. Controlled chaos makes you look incompetent if you resist it. You seem argumentative when you ask for clarity. You seem emotional when you demand consistency. The calm leader becomes the lighthouse in a storm they themselves created. You must understand this. Chaos is convenient for the manipulator. Confusion consumes your mental bandwidth. It makes you reactive, not strategic. It forces you into the shallow, immediate tasks of surviving the moment, so you never have the resources to question the larger structure. When you are busy putting out fires, you cannot notice who lit them. When confusion becomes profit. Controlled chaos can be profitable. Distractions sell. Brands launch controversies to drown out bad PR. Corporations push manufactured scarcity while executives rework ownership. Influencers manufacture drama to spike engagement. Politicians time noise to bury policy changes. You are the audience. Your outrage is the currency. And the ones who own the exchange always profit. So how do you defend yourself? How do you stand unmoved while the crowd panics? First, recognize the pattern. Ask, who benefits if I look left? Who loses if I don't notice the other hand? If the noise is loud and the consequences are subtle, that's not coincidence, that's a diversion. Second, protect your attention. Attention is finite. Guard it like capital. Slow down the consumption of outrage. Pause before you retweet, before you share, before you react. The fastest reactions are the cheapest manipulations. Third, demand context. Insist on timelines, documents, motives. When facts are scarce and emotions are abundant, the most likely outcome is manipulation. Fourth, cultivate calm. Your clearest decisions arrive when your nervous system is regulated. Calm breathing, delayed response, a simple question, "What am I missing?" can collapse the manipulator's leverage. Fifth, build redundancy. Trust multiple sources, cross-check motivations. If everyone around you believes the same outrage narrative without evidence, step out. Ask the quiet person. Read the paper no one mentions. The truth often hides in the neglected margins. Remember this second truth. Controlled chaos is an invitation. It invites you to react so someone else can act. It thrives on speed, on spectacle, on the tribal urge to choose sides without understanding stakes. When you create confusion, you become the only source of clarity for those who wield it. That clarity becomes power. It becomes influence. It becomes rule. If you want to be free from the trick, stop being the audience. Slow the moment. Question the noise. Reclaim your attention as a weapon. Because in the war for minds, the loudest noise is rarely the most important signal. And when the world screams, the one who whispers the truth, clearly, calmly, deliberately, controls what the crowd will accept as reality.
Conclusion: the dark mirror. Before every decision, before every choice you think is yours, ask, who set the frame? Who whispered the suggestion before you even opened your mouth? Who engineered the context in which your mind is now operating? All 6 tricks, priming obedience, emotional anchoring, the illusion of choice, the scarcity frame, the mirror effect, and controlled chaos, converge on one truth. Power is silent, invisible, and anticipatory. Real influence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It whispers through context, through perception, through the invisible hands shaping your attention, your emotions, your decisions. You think you're thinking freely, but your mind has already been primed. Each reaction you think is spontaneous may already be an answer to a question you didn't know was asked. The final lesson is simple and terrifying. To influence is to rule the unseen. A fusion of Machiavelli, Cialdini, and Greene teaches you that domination rarely comes from force. It comes from shaping what people perceive before they even act. It comes from controlling the stage before they even realize the play has begun. Look into this mirror of influence. See the shadows, the silent manipulations, the invisible levers, and ask yourself, will you be the one pulled or the one pulling?